Hello, welcome to a new video. Today we're going to be showing you how to adjust the float inside of your carburetor on your 250/450 race bike. If you're having problems with your carburetor leaking gas from the bottom of the carburetor where the overflow is, then you probably need to adjust your float. So that's what I'm going to be showing you today in this video. In this video, I'm going to be showing how to remove the carburetor, how to disassemble the carburetor, how to adjust the float, and how to reassemble the carburetor and put the carburetor back on the bike. Now this bike was running rough just probably about a week ago. It sat for about a week and now it won't even run at all, and it's leaking gas. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the carburetor off, we're going to adjust the float and check all the jets and make sure everything is clean and good, and we'll see if she runs. This video isn't specifically for 250/450 race bikes. It can work for 150 race bikes, but this is mostly for race bikes, race 4-strokes at least. This also can work on some 2-strokes and smaller bikes too. If you want to watch this tutorial, this will help you a little bit, but it's not going to be perfectly exactly like a crf250 or something. But let's go ahead and get into taking the carburetor off. Hopefully this is a good view for everybody to see the carburetor and how we're going to be taking this thing off. So let's go ahead and start doing this. So what you're going to need to start out with is going ahead and getting these hose clamps off. There's going to be a clamp on the air box over here that attaches the carburetor to the air box, and there's going to be one that attaches the intake, the engine to the carburetor. So you're going to have to take that clamp off and that clamp off. This clamp comes off with a flathead screwdriver. Let me grab that really quickly. Alrighty, so I got my flathead screwdriver here. What you're gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and loosen this clamp, that hose clamp that attaches to the air box. You just loosen that until it's just loose enough to where you can move it around with your finger. That should be fine. Now we're gonna go ahead and get this one off, and this one's gonna be hard to get off. It's gonna be hard to reach there. That one's gonna take an Allen wrench, so let's go ahead and grab my Allen wrench here. This is an Allen wrench. It's got 6 sides. It's also called a hex wrench. Let's see if I can fit that in there. Go ahead and start loosening that up. Now these clamps are a little bit stubborn sometimes, these hose clamps on the intake manifold. I think that should be loose enough. Now, I'm taking your carburetor off. After you get those loose, make sure those clamps are loose. Your carburetor should slide up and down just like so. You should freely be able to slide it. Now, I got all these hoses here. Make sure all your hoses aren't tangled up on the frame or the motor or anything. Make sure all your hoses are loose. Now, what you want to do is make sure your gas is off. Make sure your gas is off before you do this. Now, my carburetor is full of gas, and yours will be too, as long as you haven't drained it or anything yet. So, removing this, you're going to take this gas line right here that attaches the fuel petcock valve, and it goes all the way down to the carburetor here. It's usually on the front of the carburetor, maybe the side of the carburetor, but you just got to take the fuel line that attaches the gas tank to the carburetor off. Just go ahead and take that off with your hands. It's going to leak a little bit of gas when you take it off. Okay, mine is dry. Well, that's not good. It don't even smell like gas. Wait a minute. Okay, it definitely has gas. Okay. Sometimes it'll leak a little bit of gas, but mine didn't. Mine was super dry for some reason. It don't matter. Whatever. Go ahead and take your fuel line off, and most carburetors, most 4-stroke carburetors will have one of these wires here that connects the carburetor to wherever it goes up in there. Just go ahead, and there's going to be a little push button right there. You push the little button right there on top of the on the top of the wire, the plug, and push that in and start pulling. Don't pull on the wires, pull on the little plastic piece. Okay, it's being stubborn. There we go. So now that you got that disconnected, there you go, you got that. Now let's go ahead and switch to the other side of the carburetor and do the hard part. So now on this side of the carburetor here, this is the throttle assembly. Now, if you don't take this off that carburetor, it's not gonna come off. So usually, mine doesn't have the cover on it right now, but usually they'll have a little cover on them that looks something like this. And it just comes off with 2 screws. Mine comes off by an Allen wrench. 2 of those screws, and it just slides right off there. So after you take that off, you're gonna have 2 bolts here and here. If you have a push-pull throttle cable, it's gonna have a 10 millimeter and a 14 millimeter on my bike. Yours may have different, but I already got my 14 millimeter wrench here. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen this bolt on the top here. If it would loosen. All right, there's that one. Now get your 10 millimeter and loosen this one, and go ahead and take this one out. Let me show you. Alrighty, so I got these bolts right here loosened up. I got the 10 millimeter loose. Now, when you get this one loose, this most of the time just comes right out. And it'll go all the way around this wheel right here to right there where it's a circle. You can see there's a circle right there. That's where it goes into the wheel. So just leave that like that for now until we get this one out. Now you just want to screw this one out. Sometimes it won't come out all the way with your fingers, but luckily today mine did. Now what you're going to want to do is go up to your throttle and just pull it back like normal, and that top one will come out just like that. Now what you want to do is take your fingers and just go ahead and try to thread that and get that out of there just like that. Now you can let off the throttle and this one is undone. Now you can go ahead and pull this one out too. So you got both of the throttle cables out, and you can go ahead and pull these through, and now they're no longer connected to the carburetor. All you got to do is screw that out, take that out, pull the throttle back, take this one, the top one right there off, pull that out, and then take that one off, pull that out, and then you can pull them both off, and they're no longer connected to the carburetor. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the carburetor. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove the carburetor. Now this is, okay, my camera fell, it's fine. Now this is one of the harder parts to doing the carburetor removal. It's actually taking it off the bike. This is probably my most least favorite part about taking a carburetor off of a 4-stroke race bike, because they're so complicated and you got to remove so many things, but on a 2-stroke you just take it off. I mean, it's easy. But so now what we're gonna do, just be aware when you turn this carburetor and when you're trying to pull it off like I do, it is going to spill gas everywhere. So I like to put a bowl under my bike, and if you're like out in the grass or something, you don't want gas getting in your grass or anything like that. But I like to go ahead and put a bowl or something under my bike, so all that gas. Or you can actually just take the hose line that drains it all out and just drain it right back into your gas tank. But I'm not going to be doing that today. So what you need to do is take this air hose clamp and pull it back off of the carburetor totally. And pull that all the way off so it's not attached to the carburetor anymore. And I like to just take it and just pull, just like flip it and pull on it a little bit. And try to get this air, there we go. Just use your fingers and pull that air hose off the carb without trying to murder your carburetor. Now this is the hard part. There we go. There we go, I pulled that off. Now let's bend that downwards a little bit. Now the carburetor should be easy to pull, right? There we go, just like that. There we go. Now we got our carburetor totally off the bike. You just gotta take your fingers and pull on this hose clamp, get it to come off the carburetor, bend it down kind of like that, and then you can just pull it right off the bike just like that. Now we got our carburetor. My carburetor, we definitely have a problem. Gas isn't even getting into it, because when I turn it sideways, it's not leaking anything. Like, it is dry in there. Like that, there's supposed to be like gas here, air fuel mixture, but it is dry in there. So we definitely have a float problem. We got our carburetor here. Now, usually when you're taking off a 4-stroke carburetor, you're gonna have a hot start that just screws out with a 12 millimeter right there, but mine is sealed off because it's actually cracked on the carburetor. So mine is sealed off and the cable is over there. It just usually comes off with a 12 millimeter. You just gotta take that out and then you're good. So now that we got the carburetor off, sometimes if they're not clamped on there, I like to just remove these hoses, and it just makes it so much easier. So I got those hoses off of there, and now they're just hanging off to the side of the carburetor. So now to adjust your float, take your carburetor, sit it upside down. Sometimes it likes to sit, sometimes it doesn't. Usually these things don't sit upside down, but I got it to sit just like that. So now how you're gonna do this is there's 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's a hard one to see right there, but there's going to be 4 screws on that takes the bowl off. Now, if your carburetor has gas in it, when you take that bowl off, it's like that whole bowl is supposed to be full of gas. So gas is going to go everywhere. So make sure you do this over a bowl, something like that. Just do it over a bowl. All right, so let's go ahead and get these screws out of here. Mine just come off with a Phillips head because I've rebuilt this carburetor already, so they come with new screws, but usually it comes off with an Allen wrench. Usually like a 2mm or something like that. The screw's being stubborn. I'm gonna go ahead and skip 30 seconds into the video because this might take me a second to get these screws out. Now, just a disclaimer, don't take these screws out. Don't take the silver part off. You don't want to take that off. You're gonna have a hard time getting that back together because there's a spring in there that'll fly across the room if you take that off. I just don't like to do that. So I'm just taking these 4 screws out here. This is your air fuel mixture screw. If it's already set correctly, don't touch it, but the factory setting for my 2003 yz250f is 1 7/8 of a turn out. So you just turn that all the way in until it's in, and then turn that out 1 7/8. That's factory though. If your bike's old as mine and it's been sitting for a year like mine did, then it's probably not gonna be factory. Mine also has an air leak somewhere, so it's also not, it's gonna be probably about 4 or 5 turns out. So, try and get these 4 screws out here. All right, now that you got the 4 screws out, this bowl should just slide right off. And look at that. That is dry. There is nothing in there. Gas should be running into there. So that means your needle's stuck. So if your carburetor is totally dry, your needle is stuck, and that's why it won't crank. The needle, this is the float right here. The needle is what's attached to the float right about there. You can see the little metal pin right there. There's a needle in there. Now when that float floats, when the carburetor's sitting down like that, the float's gonna come out, and then gas flows in and it pushes the float up, and that needle seals off the gas flow. Right here, it flows in and that needle seals off the gas flow when that float floats all the way up. So my needle's stuck, and that is not good. That means there's absolutely, positively no gas getting in my motor. So that right there is gonna be the problem why this thing won't start. So how I'm getting the float off here is there's gonna be a little pin that goes across right from these 2 metal pieces right here. You just gotta take you an Allen wrench or something. Let me see if I can get mine. I don't got a thin enough one right here. So let's see if I can get this out with my fingers. Having a hard time here. Okay, this pin does not want to come out for some reason. I can't seem to find an Allen wrench that'll push it out there. So right here's the pin. It just goes right through there. Go ahead and pull that pin out, and your float's gonna fall. Do not lose that pin. You really don't want to go through that trouble. Oh, and my needle fell. Right here's the float. This is your float. What you want to do is go ahead and inspect the float. Make sure it has no holes or anything in it. Make sure it feels light. There's no gas inside of it. My float looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and order a new one anyways, just because it's old. It's got a couple, it looks like a little puncture right there. So we're gonna go ahead and order a new one anyway, and a new needle. So, because this needle seems like it's getting stuck. Yeah, that's bent right there. You don't want a bent needle. Now, you don't want a dull needle either, or one with ridges in it. You want a perfectly tipped needle. Now, my needle looks fine, but it keeps getting stuck in there. Right there is where your needle goes in. So now, what we're gonna do, put it back together and check the float height and adjust the float height. So, what we're gonna do is, let me set my camera back up right there. And you can partly see the carburetor. So, to check your float height, you want to take your float and your needle, take that little metal piece on top, and run it right onto there. So that should hang off the float on that little metal tab right there. Now, lower that needle down into the hole it goes into, and set your float back. Take your take the float pin, put it back in there to hold the float where it's supposed to sit at. And there we go. Now what you want to do is, we're going to take my camera, hold your thing, hold the carburetor upside down like this. As you can see here, my float is off. It should be parallel. So it should look more a little bit like that. About right there is where it should be, but it's down there. So how we're gonna adjust this is you're going to adjust that little metal tab right there. You can push and pull that in and out however you need to. Mine needs to go a little bit more in. So we're gonna go ahead and bend that tab right there. So you gotta take your float back out again. Now we got our float out. That little metal tab, as you can see, it is already super bent, meaning it definitely needs a new float. If that tab's already bent and you need to bend it more that way, then you probably need a new float. So I went ahead and ordered one already. It should be here like next week sometime. So we're gonna go ahead and bend that tab even more. So I like to get my float right here and take a flathead screwdriver and kind of just get up in there and just bend that tab. If you break the tab, then that's kind of sucks, but try not to break it. If I could get my flathead screwdriver in there, we might be able to do this a little bit easier, but it don't seem like it wants to bend today. I think I bent it a little bit. I'll just go a tiny bit more to be safe. That might be a little bit too much. You can use your finger to bend it back if you go a little bit too far. Now that we've got that just like that, I like to just sit the float back in here. I like to just sit my float, okay camera. I like to just sit my float back in there and hold it with my finger instead of having to put that pin in and out and in and out and in and out. Which most of the time this doesn't really work. So, go ahead and get your pin. Put it back in there. Don't like me. Dang it, I gotta take the needle back out now. Go ahead and get the needle on correctly. Sometimes your needle you put your needle back, put the needle on backwards and then it doesn't work right. Anyways, now I got this float tab super bent. That needle ain't gonna wanna go back in there. Cause that tab is bent. All right, there we go. I think I got my needle in there. There we go. Needle's in there. Where'd the pin go? Oh, it's already. Go ahead and push your pin back through there, and let's check float height again. Okay. So I definitely bent that tab a little bit too far. Yeah, we went a little bit far on that tab bend there. Now we're a little bit more off, so I'm gonna go ahead and just bend it while it's on there. So I don't gotta take it off again. There we go. That should be perfect float height right there. 1 second, I'll show you. I'm just trying to get there we go, that's way better. So now I got the float height. It's still a tiny bit off, but I think we should be a little bit fine, but it should be about right there, but it's right there, so I think we're fine. My float height's good now. Got our float set correctly. That tab is bent and it doesn't look like that needle's coming out, meaning gas is not gonna get in there. So how I like to test this is I like to go ahead and set the carburetor like this, attach the gas line back to it. Just like I'm doing here, you see the gas line. So attach it about 1/4 of the way back on, just enough to get gas flow through there. And I like to just barely turn on the gas. Just about halfway, full way, and no gas is coming through there. Gas should be leaking out right here if my needle was working correctly. So we can tell that there's absolutely no gas getting into the engine, meaning I need a new needle. Turn the gas back off. Let's go ahead and take that off. Now make sure your gas tank is giving gas. Just barely turn it on. Yep, it's definitely giving gas out of it. So you can tell your gas line's giving gas to your carburetor's just being a bum. So we're gonna go ahead and buy a new floating needle for this thing. We're gonna put it back in, put the carburetor back together, and we should be fine. Shouldn't have any more problems, and put the bike back together. It should idle, everything should be smooth and should work well. I will have another video posted on my channel probably in about 3 to 4 days of putting the carburetor back on. But if you watch this video and you have no idea how to put the carburetor back on, I recommend looking up another YouTube video on how to put it back on, because I won't be posting one for another couple days until I get my new float and stuff in. I don't want to put it back on and then have to take it back off again. But it's pretty simple. All you gotta do is just take your carburetor, take this, bend it down so it's out of the way, and then push your carburetor into that intake manifold right there, and then bend this and put it back on the carburetor. Then attach your gas line, attach this thing, go on the other side and reassemble your throttle cable assembly the same way we took it off, in the same order. Go ahead and put all that back together and you should be fine. It shouldn't be too hard to put it back together. Make sure to do your hot start too. Your hot start lever will be right here. You'll have a little hot start, or it's going to be up here. You'll have a hot start, but right now I already took mine off. So thanks everyone for watching the video, and I'll see you in another video. We're going to be doing more videos about replacing the bars on your bike, replacing the levers. We're going to be doing videos about checking your air filter, replacing your air filter, replacing sprocket, chain, replacing plastics, replacing the seat, putting a new seat cover on. I'm going to have videos for absolutely everything on a 4-stroke racing bike on my channel. So go ahead and check out my channel, as this is my first video. So we're not going to have many right now, but if you go ahead and check out my channel in the future, you're going to see some more videos about some stuff about 4-stroke racing bikes, how to disassemble, reassemble everything. But that's going to be it for this video. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any other videos about putting together, fixing, and all that on your 4-stroke racing bike.